This is a topic that is near and dear to our hearts, and either one of us could probably talk to you for all day, um, and you'd still not know the amazing things about birds. I guess I've been a birder since I was in college, and it makes you look at the world in a little different way when you are interested in birds. You start paying more attention to the things that are going on around you. And so, whether you ever get to the point of being serious about it, when you start getting interested in birds, that interest expands and you start looking more closely at the plants and the weather and all of it. So it is a wonderful way to get into being a naturalist. And it is one of the biggest pastimes that the average public has. It's not as universal as gardening. There are more gardeners than there are birders, but it's still a very important outdoor activity. Now, today I did not do you a PowerPoint because I don't like to take things off the internet either. I like to use my own pictures, and I just don't have a whole lot of pictures of birdhouses. But that's the main thing I want to talk to you today is the bird house side of being a backyard type of a birder. So I gave you, I think, an outline, and I'll try to follow it and write something down if I say something that you need to remember. The first thing that I want you to know is that there are many excellent sources of more information about all of this. But I want to start by mentioning something that I hope we can have a whole lunch and learn next year, and that is the concept of homegrown national park. This is an idea from probably the most influential environmental writer that we have today. Doug Tallamy is kind of the voice of environmental activities for the everyday citizen. And if you read any of his books, you will find them very valuable. But if I had to recommend where to start, I would probably say this is a book that I would start you on to get you started to thinking about what you as an individual can do to improve the environment. If you are specifically looking for information about birds, the first source that everybody now thinks of is, well, what's out there on the internet? So I want to mention two places to go on the internet to find lots and lots of reliable information. And the first one that I'm going to recommend is Cornell University up in Ithaca, New York, is the world's most important study area for birding. And they have a website called allaboutbirds.org. One word, All About Birds. It is a huge site, but that's where you go for identification. It's where you go for all kinds of programs that they have, classes that you can take, you name it. If it's about birds, they've probably got something very valuable on that website. And if you're just really trying to learn identification, their little app called Merlin is an excellent thing to have on your phone, not only for looking at a bird and trying to find out what it is by you saw it, but also by the sound. So All About Birds is one I'd recommend, and anything from the Audubon Society is going to be reliable and good. We have a new book that is available, has not been out very long, but is outstanding, and it is for our area. This is from the Texas University Press, and it's Land Stewardship for Birds, a guide for Central Texas. So in this book, you can find a lot of general information, and then once you have got the general information that you want, whatever kind of bird you've got, they're going to have page after page of what you can do to make your place better for that particular kind of bird. So it's a little bit of a spendy thing, but this is where all the information is that you would need if you want to make an area better for birds. I'm really enjoying that one. Now let's think about what we can do. What Charlene was saying, different kinds of bird seed, different kinds of feeders for different kinds of birds definitely holds true for nesting. There are a lot of different styles of nests. And when people start thinking, oh, I want to put up a birdhouse, the first thing that you need to do really is to think about the natural aspect of your property in the first place. What have you already got that you could encourage or preserve, and that would be a better habitat for birds? I see sometime on some of the Facebook pages, here's a picture of somebody, they've just bought this house in a subdivision. It's got a backyard. It's got a privacy fence around the backyard, and it's got one bush right there. And the question is, what can I do to make my backyard just full of birds? And the answer to that does not start with hanging up a feeder. The answer to that starts with looking at the plants that you've got out there. So you need to realize that the majority of birds build their nests fairly low to the ground. They are not all up there in the tops of trees. You need to have structure so that you've got canopy, you've got understory, you've got shrubbery, and so forth. And encouraging birds to build in the kind of places that they've been programmed to. Birds have been on the earth for millions of years. You are not going to convince a bird that is programmed to build a little swinging basket between twigs to, instead of that, get into your birdhouse. It is not going to happen. In fact, there aren't all that many kinds of birds that you can convince to nest in a man-made structure. If it's not a cavity nesting bird in the first place, it's not interested in this. So let's take this little example. Hummingbird house. No, it's not. This is a doodad probably made in China. Okay? It's cute, but there is no way a hummingbird will ever show any interest in building a house in this. A hummingbird builds a house that's about that big around, mostly builds it out of lichen, and it sits on top of a little branch. And that's it. It's nothing at all like this. But as I said, birding has become quite a popular thing. And because of that, you will find stuff for sale that is not at all based on the science of ornithology. It should be. It would make a very cute Christmas ornament. Paint it, make it pretty, and that's another thing. Birds don't care. All right. I don't know what this costs. It was given to me, and it's cute. It really is. But is it any better as a birdhouse because it's all painted up cute? No, the bird doesn't care. When we put in Fort Boggy all those years ago, one of the first activities that they tried to use to involve the public in that park was to encourage people to build or buy birdhouses, and they were going to put up a birdhouse trail. And they did, about the distance of an ordinary fence post away from each other, driving into Fort Boggy down here, birdhouse, 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 birdhouse. Cute. It really was. But you have to understand that most kinds of birds are territorial. They defend an area, and they defend it primarily against others of their own kind. So you take, for instance, the bluebirds. A bluebird defends an area that's about the size of a football field. If you're putting up bird houses for bluebirds, about 100 yards between a bluebird house and the next one. Because if you put them any closer together than that, you're not going to get another bluebird. They're going to stay away from each other. So that person who wants to make their backyard better for birds, if they go out there and put up 6 different bird houses, if they're lucky, they're going to get one family, and the rest of them are going to have things in them other than birds. So that's just something that just because you're interested in it doesn't mean you can change that birdie behavior. One of the things that people around here can do is leave snags. You know, when if we had a survey, I bet you 1 out of 10 trees in this county is dead right now. Maybe more than that, right? And as they're dead and as the limbs fall, you're left with just a snag. No better habitat for woodpeckers. Leave a snag if you can. If it's not going to fall on something, leave it. See what kind of woodpeckers you get, because after a woodpecker has used it for a few years and goes off and leaves it, now you've got a cavity. Now you can have cavity nesters, that short list that you're trying to attract. So what are our cavity nesters? Wrens. Now, wrens, they will nest almost anywhere. If you've ever had wrens, they will nest in the motor of your tractor. They will nest in your mailbox if you forget to keep the door closed. They will nest in anywhere, and they're not scared of people, so they'll do it right there on your porch. You know that. But there are other birds. There are other birds that will. Yes.
Have a broom in the shop, and there was this cluster of sticks on it. And I'm looking at that. Oh, what is that? Oh, she's back. What is it? Bird that's nested. Eggs in there. Well, I'm so short, I couldn't see it. the ladder, but you could hear the baby when you first walked in. Comes back. I don't know how she gets in the
She's got a way figured out. And be aware that it is against the law to disturb a bird nest as soon as there are eggs in it. Now, if a bird starts building a nest in an inconvenient place, you can tear it down and get rid of it until she starts laying eggs. And at that point, she's protected. That nest is protected. So you're kind of stuck not moving that tractor for a while. Fortunately, most of these birds, it's amazing how fast they can go through that generation. But be aware that they are protected like that. Now, this short list that I gave you here, chickadees, titmice, and bluebirds, all require a very similar kind of nest because they're all about the same size. Owls, of course, bigger, and wood ducks. Now, if you have checked into the requirements for making your property into wildlife management as your tax exemption, you know that putting up houses for birds is one of the activities that you may need to do. And so that would be one incentive if you have a larger area of property for building a bunch of houses for things like owls and wood ducks. Birdhouse building do's and don'ts. Aesthetics versus practicality. You can see a lot of cool ways to build birdhouses. Now this, the only thing about this, it's just a little too small, because by the time a bird brought their nesting material into that, there wouldn't be much room left. But if this was twice as large, it would be pretty cool. It would be nice. If you have gourds, you can try doing that. They're hard to clean out. That would be the main criticism that I have of real gourd birdhouses. But when you get into building birdhouses, don't be worried about what color you're going to paint it. Do be worried about what you are going to build it out of. You do not want to build a bird nest out of treated lumber. Now, on the one hand, they would last a long time and that would be good, but you're trying not to expose the birds to those kinds of chemicals. So best things to build birdhouses out of would be cedar, cypress, because those woods last a long time anyway. If you use untreated lumber, okay, if you build a birdhouse out of untreated wood and you put it in a fairly good place, you're still going to get several years use out of it, just not forever. Sizes. This is very critical. You need to make a decision about what kind of birds you're trying to attract. Then you need to go online and find exactly a diagram for that kind of house. And one of the things that it will talk about is the floor space, how much size, and it will talk a lot about the doorway, the exact size. Now, we don't have as much trouble up here as you would if you lived in Montgomery County or Harris County. But if you have a bird, the hole just a little bit too big, you will get things like house sparrows and starlings and invasive birds that you don't want. So the size of the doorway is very important. And you do not need a peg for a perch on any of them. That is just a place for the snakes and the cats to hang on as they're trying to get into that thing. Birds do not need perches. It is helpful if you have what are called kerf marks, which is just grooves that are cut into the wood giving them someplace to hang, but don't put a perch. And if those kinds of things are actually a problem, one way to prevent predators from getting in is using 1/4-inch hardware cloth and making a little tube. And so you have a little wire tube coming out that doesn't stop the bird, but it will stop a raccoon whose arm is just not quite long enough to reach all the way in to where the eggs are. Ventilation and drainage. We need to think about that, and one of the ways you can have good ventilation is to have a little bit of space under the roof, and you need drainage. There's some way for water to drain out of the floor. Are there holes or corners cut or some way that if water gets in, it can drain out? So ventilation and drainage here in Texas, both are important. And then the location. Read up on what that species normally expects and put that house in the right area, but also think about you're going to have to take care of that nest. Most nests need to go somewhere between 6 feet, 10 feet high, not skyscraper height. Or put them like we did this morning. We had one that was way high, and we got it down because there was a joint in the tube, so made it easy for us to get one down. Location, generally point them east, just as a general rule. Do not point them north. Some birds want a big open space in front of their house, like a good flyway coming in. Other species would prefer to have it a little bit more secluded. So read up on the kind of bird you want and think about that. Maintenance. Most bird nests need to be cleaned out at least once a year. Most of the bird houses that we build, we put some kind of nesting material in there, and if we don't put enough, the bird's going to bring some more. Well, after a while, things like feather mites can grow in there, and it can get pretty nasty. So at least once a year, it's good to open them up and clean them out. So that would be the main thing as far as maintenance. And be aware that sometimes when you go out there to maintain that nest and you open it up, there's a little surprise. Okay, any of you who maintain deer stands know what can go on in a deer stand. And you know that first time that you go out to that deer stand, you got a can of wasp spray with you, don't you? All right, well, the same thing probably needs to be true when you open up a bird house that isn't occupied. So you say, well, what could I have done to keep that wasp nest from being built there in the first place? Soap. Ivory soap. Very, very pure soap. And just grease that thing up with ivory soap at the beginning of the season. And apparently wasps don't like to try to glue their little nest onto that. And you don't have to do anything except the roof, because that's where they build. But that's also one reason why gourd houses often fail, is they get full of wasps instead of full of birds. Okay, what I brought today for y'all to look at Mhm.
So you pick that up once.
Yeah, yeah.
And if you use the same, like you brought it out.
Mhm.
The next season, you still need to do it again.
I would refresh it. Yeah. Yeah. But that's right, isn't it, Charlie?
I carry a bar of ivory soap in my mule brush on. Because sometimes
Yeah,
you
it's
don't cover it completely, and all you need is a little bit that didn't get covered in there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But I just keep a bar of ivory soap in my mule.
Mhm.
Okay.
Now, you may or may not be a woodworker. Good news is you can buy some really nice kits, build your own birdhouse, and it's all the cutting is, everything is done, and I think it's even pre-drilled maybe. I think I've seen some of these that were actually from the Audubon Society over at Brawley's in Palestine. So if you, and Mr. Amazon is bound to have some. Buying birdhouses, good ones are expensive. But if we were pricing lumber, lumber is expensive, the kind that we need. This one didn't cost much because it's leftover lumber from a wood duck nest project from several years ago. But if I was buying lumber, I wouldn't have to buy quite so much. It required 8-inch wide wood, and all I had was 4-inch wide. So we kind of overbuilt this. Larry's my accomplice in this. We built two, one for him, one for me. So what I have for you to look at, I'd like you to look at this. I'd like you to look at this, and then answer any questions that you might have about how you can put up more effective birdhouses than you were thinking you could. Yes, ma'am.
There's a cinema market sometimes on Saturday. And
Always on Saturday.
yeah, it's always
Yeah,
on
yeah.
Saturday. But sometimes they sell birdhouses there. You see that? They birdhouses themselves and not
I have not examined them myself, but the first thing that I would do if I were going to sell birdhouses, I would make them pretty. So the first thing I would not do is to pay any attention to whether they were pretty or not.
No, you do not. It's
Plain wood is good. Perfect. All right. The next thing that I would look at are things like this. No perch, kerf marks, yes. Perches, no. No perches. The floor should be recessed a little bit so that water is not going to collect there. It's all right if there's space, ventilation. When you look inside, is there a way to get in and clean it? How convenient is that going to be? Okay. Those are some of the things that I would look at. And then the next thing would be to ask, what kind of bird is this built for? Because this is a screech owl box. Okay. Screech owls are our smallest owls. They like to spend the winter just sitting around in boxes. And they also are very slow to adopt a new box. So we're going to put this up, and I'm not going to expect a nest right away. It might be a year from now before they take that nest. But I'm going to put this where I can see that little screech owl looking out someday. All right. So if I'm going to buy a birdhouse, I'm going to say, what kind of birdhouse is this for? Particularly, is the hole the right size? And it's not hard to do your homework if you've got in your mind, I want a bluebird house. And then you go and here's the house and you say, what kind of birds are these for? And the guy says, oh, they're bluebird houses. All right. Here's the size. I believe that's 1.25 inches. Yeah. If I looked at that bluebird house and it had a doorway that size, I'd pass that by. That's not the bluebird house that I'm shopping for. Okay? Other questions? Yes.
So I just looked at kind of like birds and we like to stay in home too.
Yes.
Is it hard for Novalene if you do paint it up?
No, it doesn't hurt. It just doesn't matter. If you want to make it pretty so that when you look at it, it's pretty, whether there's a bird in it or not, go for it. But
I just want to make sure it wasn't gonna hurt 'em.
it's not going to hurt them. Yeah, you can pretty it up. You can use, this is very common, use a license plate for the roof. That's pretty common. It's cute. You can do all those cute things as long as you stick to what does the bird need.
And it's not gonna, like, lack of better words, scare them or make them not come because it's painted or anything.
No, it is not. Now, birds can see color. Birds have excellent vision, but they're not frightened at something because of the color of it. Okay, I would like to, oh yeah, one more.
So in nature, don't put these houses out there. They're going to nest.
Somewhere.
We have one deer feeder. Turkey vulture nests in it every single year. I have a Seven Sisters rose bush nest from so big. Redbirds all in there and make their nest. First, if you have a cashew full of goatweed, you can draw the dove
Mm-hmm.
and the chuck squirrel widow, feature those. Also,
You know, we're the number of Chuckwill's widows that we've got is definitely on the decline. Yeah, that's that's a species of some concern.
have Samuel dead trees.
Mm-hmm.
And I love my little
Yeah.
because I have affiliated, I have big bread.
Yeah.
And they'll even come down now and perch on the coast of my.
Birds habituate to humans. Some birds really quickly and easily. Fortunately, there are some birds that are very suspicious, and that is one of the reasons why we have lost several kinds of birds, because they don't get along well with humans. So birds in general are in decline, but the ones that will come to our feeders and will nest near us are in a lot less precarious position than the ones that don't want to be seen. Yes, ma'am.
Some birds try to leave my cat.
They would try to lead a cat away from an area that they're defending. I would not say that bird is trying to lead the cat into the highway, but it might be leading that cat away from a nest area. So don't give the instincts of a bird are remarkable, but they're also pretty programmed. So don't give them too much credit, on that. I'd like to give you some time to look at these things. So why don't I put one of them on one table and one of them on another table? And it's been great doing this. If you have any other questions anytime, give me a holler.